from Tellina's Napoleonic shipyard. So I'm doing a build log here of the HMS Sophie, and it is from this 3D printed hull of the Vincejo that was made by my friend from Original Plans. Those 16K printed hulls. I think he did a great job, and I also decided to keep the ornament of the Vincejo because I might not run this as HMS Sophie always. Or His Majesty's Brig Sophie always. Also, this even speeding things up. This is going to be quite a long build log. Of course, I'm going to speed up things up quite a bit, but I'm going to split it in parts. So this first section is going to be about mostly building the masts. And then as we move on, I'm going to be doing one section about the painting and then one section about the rigging, I think. So that's how this is going to work. So it's going to actually be 3 different videos. So we're into it already, and I am building the mast. I was using an Excel that I found on Model Ship World. That is mostly for larger scale models. I use that as a base when I don't exactly know the measurements of the masts and the yards. I use that as a base. I say as a base because I tend to change things around a bit as I like them. And of course also this ship is not going to follow the measurements of the Sophie exactly, like the fictional Sophie. It's going to be a split between the Sophie and this Vincejo, and also Speedy. There's some elements of Speedy in the fictional ship, right, that is not in my model, like the 14 guns for instance. So what I'm doing is I'm using different diameters of brass when I'm building the masts. And actually I'm at this point mostly using that spreadsheet that I found on Model Ship World for the diameters, like scaling them down to 1/700 scale. Of course there's taper, and sometimes I do more filing than I did on this one. These are so thin that I feel like the filing almost doesn't show. So and this is a model for myself, so I didn't do too much of tapering. Of course the mast sections, they should taper. So you should be filing quite a bit. And I've done that in the past on some other models. But on this one, I didn't do too much of it. I did a little bit. So basically, I'm just measuring different sizes here. The diameters and the lengths. And working mostly like 0.6, 0.5, 0.4, down to 0.3 and 0.2 millimeter brass wire. You can find this in different places if you want to build stuff. I buy most of my stuff being in Europe from a place in Poland that has a pretty good coverage. It's not cheap. Like in the long run, I guess I built quite a few models, so then maybe my pricing is higher than if you just build a single model. But I find like the brass is more expensive than you think, and you end up using more than you think as well. Like even if it's small lengths, you end up cutting off, and then it's like a leftover piece that's no good for nothing. And so be ready for that there is a little bit of expense with building your own mast. Of course you have complete control, so you can just get it looking exactly like you want, right, with a little bit of patience. I'm also using, of course, references. This being a fictional ship, I mostly just look, I think it's a painting by what's his name, it's Jeff Hunt or something. I can't remember the painter, but I was looking a little bit at the painting by him and some other like fictional paintings, and also the plans of the Vincejo, just to get an idea as I was building to make it look kind of right. I did get one thing a little bit wrong. I should have made the main mast, like the back mast on a brig is the main mast, right? Should have made that main yard wider. It was also pointed out on some forum somewhere when I posted about this. But you know, we make mistakes, and then I'll say this is the main yard of the Vincejo rather than the Sophie, like this being a little bit of a hybrid build. I mean, I'm going for the look of the Sophie, but it's not going to be like perfect because it has already too many guns for being the fictional Sophie. But as close as I can with paintwork and everything, and of course it's going to be a good representation for the tabletop. So here you can see I'm actually using used anchors from Warlord games, like the plastic, for building. I mean, reusing pieces is always a good idea because you're saving money. And I have a lot of those anchors. I'm not using them anymore, so then I use them for making those end pieces for the mast sections and so on. Make sure, I mean, I'm using the cyanoacrylate glue from Green Stuff World. I find that really good. It flows slower, so of course it has a little longer drying time, so you're gonna have to work a little bit longer with each piece. But then if you use that, then also, and you will see this later, I'm also using like copper wire and plastic bits and so on for the ends and so on, so to make sure that there's more than just one point where the masts are actually glued together, so you don't have the whole mast end up breaking off while you're playing or so on. If there is a little bit of wind noise in the background, we have like more or less like a snowstorm outside here today, so as I'm recording this, I hope it's not gonna be too loud on the video here in the background. Not much I can do about that. It's like snow drifts outside. So here I'm working with the fighting tops, and these are just loose fighting tops actually these are not from my friend. My friend also make those, but these are actually from Turner Miniatures. So these are Turner Miniature masts, and I just use those loose fighting tops, and I cut out sections in the middle for the mast bits, and also hopefully for the rat lines to pass through. In this case, I since this is an after effect, I know that I ended up making the hole a little bit too small for the rat lines actually to pass through, so I ended up having to cut them anyway. But if you can make the hole bigger, then make the hole a little bit bigger, and then you can get the rat lines to pass through. Using a hand drill and a hobby knife, sharp clippers, different types like metal clippers and plastic clippers and so on. Tools are AO, right? If you want to go high detail, then you need the right tool for the job. So, and patience, of course. So at this point, why I'm actually drilling on this wooden board is because my wife actually took my cutting mat, was like making some leather stuff, and she actually hammered it, so it was like broken, and then she got me a new one, and that's going to show up later in the video. So I had to use a piece of wood in between. I'm still just building up the mast, getting the height right, getting the fighting top in place. As I said, those are Turner miniature prints. There's some finer detail on the ones that my friend made and sent me. But I mean, for a board game, also, if you don't have the patience with all this and building your own mast, just use Warlord masts. I mean, for a war game model, that's just fine. It's just me doing all this stuff. So here I'm using this 0.1 millimeter. Actually, it's not brass wire, it's copper wire, because that's more like bendable, so you can bend it different ways, so it doesn't stick in shape. And I'm using that to attach all the yards. So the yards are glued, and they're also attached with copper wire, very thin copper wire. Let's just keep it in place, make it safe, make the model a little bit more durable as you're painting it and handling it and so on. Making the bowsprit, and then slowly building up the mast, the top mast, and then the royal mast and so on. And also, of course, all the time dry fitting, trying to see how well it fits on the model, and so on. Most of the time I manage to get this pretty well filmed, so you get this different views that are where you can see what I'm doing, more or less. But then at some points I found it's not so visible. I'm just cutting those sections out, I think, since you won't have much use of obviously seeing my hands going outside of the picture, right? So I'll try to summarize those sections. But you see, we're already a few hours into this build. Building your own mast takes time. It is not a quick process. You need a lot of patience and a lot of time. It takes a long time to build these things. And I was almost afraid to film a whole process like this, both also because there was going to be a lot of video footage. Filming it in 4K, the file becomes very large, but also because I really don't want to know how many hours I spend on these things. Like once in a while I have made commissions, and I always feel like even if nowadays maybe I would charge a little bit more for a commission, it's still way underpaid. So I am working on the base, and this is the way I do it. This is just a simple C base that I use for the miniatures when I use them for war games. It's no diorama, right? So it's a mix of army paint or speed paint, a turquoise ink that I've shown in other videos. I really like that one, and some blue. And I vary this. I never really go exactly the same. I always switch around the tones a bit, because I would like it. I don't want everything to look exactly the same. I always want a different look. So that was a really quick process. Just a few drops of each on the bottom, and then just mix it around. Not completely homogeneous, because you want a little bit of variation. And that's on the underside of the base, actually. So that's how I get that look that many of you like. So I'm painting the underside with the ink, and then on the mix of those paints, and they're semi-transparent. And then at a later point, you will see in the video, I'm going to go over it with some satin varnish to again bring some of the light going through it. It looks like a little bit wonky before you then add the sea texture on top, but once you do that, you get kind of a pretty good realistic look, I think, for the scale. So here I've started working on the yard arms, and just testing different angles, making sure. Of course, it's very fragile at this point. Before I start using the copper wire to attach them more properly, it's just attached with glue, and the things they're very, very, very fragile before you add a copper wire. So this stage, be a little careful with what you do. Like, don't press too hard, because you're gonna break the mass apart again, and so on. So especially when you're building these smaller ships, right, like a brig or maybe a ship's sloop, like a three-master, then you just need to be a little bit, because since all the diameters and the pieces are smaller and so on, it's very fragile. But it's at this point it usually feels really good when you're building, because it's all coming together, and you're getting, like now I'm working on that smaller wires, like that's 0.2 millimeters for a brig, so it's really fine diameters, not much thicker than the which is, I know it's a little bit wonky, but it's really hard to get it gone down to the actual diameters that would fit with a real ship if you would scale it up for the running rigging and the standing rigging and so on. So you just have to, I mean, maybe some of you can do it better and do it even more to scale, but I also think when the wires become too thin, especially when you're going to use it as a wargaming piece, you're not going to see them anymore. And here we have the foot ropes. I used to build my own, but then Atlantic Models, that I also get the photoetch rat lines from, they actually started to make these ready-made foot ropes in a lot of different sizes for 1/700 scale. So, and that saves so much time than building it by yourself, just by building with the wire, you know, really thin wire. So here you just find the right diameter, and then you just glue it onto the yard arm. So here I'm working on the bowsprit yard. Very, very, very easy process to do, really, compared to the other. And of course, yeah, saves a lot of time. They're not super cheap though, so bear that in mind. This is the primer I use. I always use ash gray primer. I mean, I know a lot of people will use black or white and so on. There's different ways to do it, but I just feel like for me, gray works. I always want to have this little bit of a used look, and I think white just is too bright for what I'm after. So ash gray it is for me, and it's also a really good base to paint on. So here I'm attaching the bowsprit to the actual hull. Sometimes I'll do this at a later point, but for this model I just wanted it in place at this point, so I can just paint the hull together with the bowsprit. And starting to work with the copper wire again, the 0.1mm copper wire, making small knots and then attaching the yard arms. I'm also going to make those rings that were around the mast, the lower section of the mast. Those rings were there to just strengthen the mast, right? So I've started to make them using this copper wire as well. I just do one loop of copper wire, or two for the bigger ships, maybe three, just to make it yeah, it actually looks pretty even and good. I used some other stuff before, I mean just the last build even, and didn't look as good as I wanted. It looks good at a distance, but you know, looking close, I think this is the superior way to go with this copper wire. A lot of work, very fiddly, very a lot of hassle, so it's up to you if you have the time. I mean, you could also just get a plastic section of mast from wall against, I guess, the lower mast. Even if you're building a smaller ship, is to take the lower section from the brig mast and then attach your other pieces to it, and then you'll have those rings on there already. So, but basically, just tie a knot on the mast section just below the yard arm, and then attaching the yard arm with the copper wire. So, and after you've done this, then they're a lot more secure. So then you can start handling it by holding the yard arm and so on, because you know, with a little dab of glue there on the knot itself, it is very, very stable. So really recommend this method if you have the time and if you're building your own masts. Of course, to see all of this, I'm using this I don't call loop glasses, like glasses that have some magnification, because also my eyesight isn't super, so I think without it I wouldn't even be able to see anything of what I'm doing. But with those I can see quite well what I'm doing, also at this scale. Really nice, those pair of pliers or scissors, tiny, like a needle pair of scissors, really good for cutting really close to the mast and so on when you're cutting. And also they're strong enough to cut these thinner diameter wires. So I really recommend getting a pair of those. It was recommended to me by Modeler Phil actually to get that. So thank you, Modeler Phil, for the tip. So just working on, and as I said, if I would redo this, I would have made the main yard on the back mast there wider, but I wasn't thinking of it at the time. I was thinking it would be that I just was listening to books and I got confused. Like I'm usually listening to the Aubrey Maturin books, and I think I got confused, so I made a wider yard on the foremast, thinking that was the main mast on the brig. I mean, again and again it shows that I don't have all the knowledge with this. I'm learning as I'm going. Here's the base again, and this is the satin varnish. It's a layer, a coat on the sides and on the underside of the base, and that's all. So that keeps it protected. Also, I usually have a magnet on the bottom of all my bases as well, and that's for mostly for when because sometimes I'm like going to a friend to play a war game and so on, so I have them magnetically locked in place inside a carry case with this magnet connected to the base. So, and it works really well. So that's another tip there that I would recommend using. I mean, I haven't had a model break in those boxes as I've been traveling with them, so I recommend it. And also I use that magnet together with glue to make sure that my ships are secured in place for when I'm shipping them as well. Although there have been a few instances, I don't know why lately, like it was fine, and lately I've had a few instances where there was actually some breaks in shipping, even with all that safe stuff. I don't know what they do with the packages to make that happen, because basically I can like shake the box without anything happening. So I don't know. Very annoying though. So I'm gonna secure it even more for my. I have a few more commissions before I think I'm gonna take a longer break on commissions and just work on my own stuff. But for those, I'm really gonna secure the stuff, because I don't want that happening more times. So here you see foot ropes attached to the mast, and of course the foot ropes are great because I also tend to have some photoetch crew on the deck and also on the masts, and then looks so much better with them not just hanging in the air but actually having their feet in the foot ropes. And as I said, that was from Atlantic Marine. This is just PVA glue, polyvinyl acrylate glue, like wood glue, mixed with water. And I ended up not having any photos of the actual process there. I'm very sorry about this, but it's for the silk span. You're gonna see it more later. But basically this time all I did was I folded the silk span in twice, had it hanging in the air to make it more or less even. And then I used that mixed out polyvinyl acrylate glue to just glue the two layers together, two sheets together. So I got a double layer of the silk span. And you could tint that already and so on. I've decided to tint later when I did this build, so all I did was the glue initially to get that a little bit more stiffer, a little bit thicker sailcloth feeling material, at least for the scale. And back to doing the foot ropes. And as you can see, this is, even if it's much easier than making your own, it is kind of a longish process. Every step here on the way, you're gonna, if you want to build the models like this, you're gonna have to spend a little bit of time on it, because every step takes a little bit of time to attach, get it right and everything. And that using a gel glue, cyanoacrylate, or maybe like if you have want a slower drying, and I use that also. You can see that when I'm doing the crew, it's a slower drying totally matte glue as well. That's also a good idea. But many times you want something that dries pretty quick, and then that glue is good. Caveat: if you get too much, it gets really shiny, and then you're gonna have to matte it down, and it also builds up quite quickly. So at this scale, it's very easy to get too much glue in a position, and then it looks kind of bad. And I haven't gotten really around that. I mean, I'm no super expert in this stuff, so I didn't get really around that. So this is the end of section 1, because in the next section we're going to be talking about painting the actual ship. But this was the prep work, like the base, the sea base, getting the masts right, building the masts, getting the copper wire on the masts and the yard arms to make them stable and secure. And once we're done with all that, then we are ready for painting. So I hope you enjoyed this first section. I'm going to be releasing this pretty tight. Why I split it in sections, because it became 1 hour and 40 minutes. I doubt anyone will be watching this. I mean, that's a commitment in time in 1 hour and 40 minutes in one sitting. So I figured I just split it into parts. So this section was about building the masts and prepping the hull and the sea base and so on. So in the next section, we're going to be talking about the paint. And in the third section, we're going to be talking about the rigging. So until the next section, I wish you fair winds and a following sea.